This is Rich Roll, and you're listening to Sober Guy Radio.
That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Humans for the badass opening and closing of Sober Guy Radio. Today's guest is Rich Roll, a graduate of Stanford University and Cornell Law School. Rich is a 47-year-old accomplished vegan ultra-endurance athlete and former entertainment attorney turned full-time wellness and plant-based nutrition advocate, motivational speaker, husband, father of 4, and inspiration to people worldwide as a transformative example of courageous and healthy living. In 2012, Rich became a #1 best-selling author with the publication of his inspirational memoir, Finding Ultra, Rejecting Middle Age, Becoming One of the World's Fittest Men, and Discovering Myself, which is a badass book, by the way. I'm getting into it right now, and it is pretty amazing. It's very descriptive. It's very well written. If you do the audio version of it, it's really cool because Rich actually read it himself. And we talked a little bit about that before we got into the interview, about how authentic that is when the author actually reads the audiobook. I'm an audio guy myself. Taking up where the book leaves off, in 2013, Rich launched the widely popular Rich Roll podcast, which persistently sits atop the iTunes top 10 lists. Lots of great stuff in this episode. I'm really excited to bring it to you guys. I just want to tell you, I appreciate all your loyalty, all your honesty, your feedback, everything. This community that's being built around Sober Guy Radio and that Sober Guy platform is absolutely amazing. And I'm so proud and so honored to be a part of it. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been there and who continues to join in and offers their positive and, just honesty in life. And we're all trying to get better. We're all after the same thing and trying to get better, be better people, be better husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, just people. So thanks again. We're going to talk to Rich Roll in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsor.
At Foundations Recovery Network, our mission is to create lifetime relationships for long-term recovery. In our history of doing good is the promise of your future getting better. So if you or someone you love needs help, please know we are here to help. And the sign on our door says, "We care." We create an individualized treatment plan for the whole person, for the whole you, because to us, you matter. The first step to recovery is heroic. We know that. And with our Heroes in Recovery movement, we honor those who have taken that step toward recovery and stand up for you and stand beside you and stand together to break the stigma placed on addiction. Call our confidential and private line at 877-714-1318. We are here to help you, and help has a phone number, 877-714-1318. Make the call. We're listening. We're Foundations Recovery Network.
Thanks again to Foundations Recovery Network, one of our awesome sponsors. Love those guys. Check them out, foundationsrecoverynetwork.com. Are you looking for a sober app, something to help track your sobriety? I Am Sober is a motivational companion app for tracking your sobriety. Along with tracking your sobriety, it helps you reach key milestones like 7 days or 1 month and sends you daily motivation along the way. You can also combine your stats with sober clubs and meet fellow sobriety seekers. You can find it on the App Store, Google Play, or you can visit iamsoberapp.com. That's iamsoberapp.com. And speaking of the daily notifications, the daily motivationals, should I say, I get the notifications at 5 o'clock a.m. 2 things I get in the morning. I get my daily Bible verse emailed to me, and I get the I Am Sober motivational quote. I think it was a couple of days ago, but I really liked this one a lot. It says, "Do it for the people who want to see you fail. So if you got some folks out there that want to see you fail, that are not supporting you in your journey of recovery, trying to quit drinking, trying to quit using drugs, live a different, positive, healthy lifestyle, man, use that as fire. Those people that aren't supporting you, use that burning fire inside you to continue on and keep going. But of course, do it for yourself first. Couple more things, and then we're going to get to Rich. Become a member of That Sober Guy community. Download the free guide, 6 quick tips to quit drinking in 24 hours. It's not a magic guide that's going to save your ass or anything like that, but it is just a few quick tips that I put together that really helped me after I came to the decision that I wanted to quit. I think that is the first tip in there, is you got to make a decision. You got to decide, I want this more than anything. I want to quit. I want to live a different lifestyle. I want to change. That's what it's about. So check that out. You can download that for free at thatsoberguy.com. Also, check out the private Facebook group, Sober Guy, Sober Girl, an awesome group. It's growing like crazy. There's tons of cool people in there from all over the country that are chiming in 24/7, leaving positive quotes, positive messages, support. It's really a great way to stay connected. So check that out, Sober Guy, Sober Girl. Request to add and we'll get you added to the group. Now, we're going to read the iTunes review of the week. This one comes from Bobby. It's titled Great Listen. It says, inspirational for any person wanting to quit or keep their recovery going strong. Short and sweet, man. Bobby, thank you for the kind feedback. Thank you for the support of the show. And you too can support the show by going to iTunes and leaving us a 5-star review. Now, without further ado, let's get to Mr. Rich Roll. Welcome to the show today. We're talking with Rich Roll. Rich, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good, Shane. Thanks for having me, man. I'm psyched to talk to you today.
I am too, man. I've been getting into some of your book, and man, it's so inspiring. And for some of us who've been through some things in our lives, maybe in our 20s into our 30s, some of the things that you've been able to accomplish after making some bad decisions back then, man, it's just truly amazing. I can't wait to get into talking about it with you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's it's been a long road, trudging the road to happy destiny, as we say.
Sure. For those who don't know you, tell us who Rich Roll is.
Let's see. Well, I'm a wellness advocate. I do lots of different things. Like yourself, I host a podcast every week, the Rich Roll podcast. I'm an author. I've written a couple books, Finding Ultra, as you mentioned, and also The Plant Power Way. I do a lot of public speaking, and I have some online products, some online courses. So I do a smattering of a whole bunch of different things, plant-based advocate, but it all kind of falls under the umbrella of just trying to be of service in the wellness community. Sure.
Great, man. Great. You also have a pretty interesting background. You graduated from Stanford and Cornell Law School. You were a swimmer as well at Stanford, and I'd like to kind of back up and get into a little bit about some of your experience there. One thing I found really interesting, man, in your book was the first beer you had with Bruce Kimball, and I'd really love to hear that story. And man, I was looking when I was doing some research for this conversation, this interview here. I wasn't familiar with Bruce, before I had heard about it in the book. And when I went back and did a little research on that, man, that has got to be one of the craziest stories, man, well, I'll kind of let you tell it. So man, take it away.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Bruce Kimball's story is insane, but to kind of set the stage for it, when I was a senior in high school, I was pretty much a goody two-shoes. I was studying really hard, and I was really devoted to swimming. That was my, focus and my passion. And I wasn't partying in high school like most kids. I didn't discover alcohol until I started going on recruiting trips. I was a good enough swimmer that I started getting flown around the country to visit various colleges. And one of those was the University of Michigan, which was a pretty, top-ranked swimming program at the time. They flew me out for a big weekend football game and the whole 9 yards, and there was a swim meet. And after the swim meet, which they won, there was a party afterwards for the swimmers and the diving team. And that's when I met Bruce Kimball. And for people that don't know, at the time, we're talking 1985. That's how old I am. I'm dating myself. But other than Greg Louganis, Bruce Kimball was the greatest American talent in diving. He was a superstar. I can't remember his exact credentials. I believe he may have won an Olympic medal in 1980. I'm not sure. His father is also one of the most legendary coaches in diving. But Bruce is is kind of a notorious alcoholic. And subsequent to this encounter, he got into a lot of trouble. But at the time, I just thought he was, I knew who he was beforehand, and I was psyched to meet him. And he was partying like a champ at this party. And he pulled off one of the greatest drinking tricks that I've ever seen in my life to date, which is he poured himself a beer out of the keg, and from a standing stature, no walking or running or anything like that, he did a standing backflip holding his beer, landed on his 2 feet, and did not spill one drop of that beer. And when I saw that, I was like, I want what that guy has,
It's like a wizard.
And I was like, give me a beer. And I just wanted to party with him. And it was game on. And I just remember that it was really the first time that I got drunk. And, you hear this a lot with alcoholics and people in recovery. It was like this warm blanket just enveloped me, and all the problems that I didn't know that I had suddenly evaporated, and I could talk to a girl and I could crack a joke and be social, because I was always a very awkward kid. I didn't like going to parties in high school. I wasn't invited, but even when I had the off chance opportunity to go, I just always felt squirmy, and I didn't know how to, handle myself. And suddenly this was my solution, delivered to me by Bruce Kimball, who then went on to get himself into quite a bit of trouble. He was involved in a couple DUIs and drunk driving accidents, one of which, I can't remember the details, but he killed somebody and went to prison for it, and that promptly ended his diving career. It's quite a tragic tragic story.
And that's what I was saying. The irony of that was so unbelievable, because he wasn't, before he had gotten to an accident and was hit by a drunk driver himself, right? Somebody had hit him, I think, and then went on and I think he plowed through some high school kids. God, I mean, just an unbelievable story, and something that is just unexpected. And when alcohol takes the wheel for many of us, man, some bad stuff can really happen.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So getting into your swimming career a bit, how did alcohol really hurt your swimming career? And I'm sure, I can imagine there was probably some hurt and some regret there. How did those feelings, how did you deal with those feelings after that?
Yeah, well, it definitely destroyed my swimming career. When you're young, you can bounce back. I can remember going to parties in college, and just to be clear, Stanford was the number one swimming program at the time, but I was very much a bench warmer. So, I was never going to make the Olympics, even under the best of circumstances. But, my drinking career definitely capped the ceiling on my potential. Yeah. And the main thing that it did was that, I could still make workout. I would wake up early in the morning, hungover, and drag myself to practice. But it just eroded my ambition. Like, I just stopped caring, really. And I didn't take care of myself, and I just became more concerned with where my next good time was. And it just made me drift away from the thing that, I was so passionate about. And I think, you work really hard in sobriety to overcome your regrets. We shall not regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. And I thought that I had kind of put that in my rear view, but I think there was always something in the back of my mind thinking, I just never really reached my potential as an athlete. And, that's where, that's a big part of my, sort of ultra endurance quest in middle age. I think in part had some, was fueled by that in some respects. This idea that, I still wanted to see what I could do under the best circumstances, sober, clean living and all the like.
And in all fairness to you, you turned down Harvard to go to Stanford, so I think that's all right.
The sunshine, swimming outdoors, I couldn't turn it down.
Sure, man. Well, since you mentioned it, talk about the Ultraman. What the hell is an Ultraman, and how did you do it in your early 40s with only 2 years of training?
So the Ultraman, and most people have heard of an Ironman, right? An Ironman is a very long triathlon, which over the course of a day, you swim 2.4 miles, and then you bike 112, and then you run a marathon. It's like this insane race, widely considered, the ultimate test of human endurance. But I stumbled across this race I'd never heard of before when I was kind of researching challenges. This race called Ultraman, which has been around for almost as long as Ironman. It's been around over 30 years at this point. And it's actually twice the distance of Ironman, a little more than twice the distance. It's a 320-mile, 3-day circumnavigation of the big island of Hawaii. So you do it like a stage race. The first day is a 6.2-mile swim, followed by 90 miles on the bike. And then the next day, you race your bike 171 miles. And then the third day, you run a double marathon, 52.4 miles. And you kind of do this loop around the entire big island of Hawaii during the course of that period. And it's limited to just 35 athletes. They keep it really small. It's invitation only. People come from all over the world. And it's very low key. Unlike Ironman, there's no sponsorship money. There's no media coverage. They don't even close the roads,
Really?
During the race. So you're riding your bike with traffic, and it's much more of a kind of spiritual adventure. And I think that's what drew me to it, because it was less about who wins and who has the fastest time, and much more about having a transformative experience over the course of this 3-day period as you swim, bike, and run, supported by your crew. Every athlete has to bring their own crew. There's a car that follows you around with people in it that feed you and fix your bike if it breaks down and the like. And it's just as much an endurance challenge for the crew as it is for the athlete. It's a team thing.
I think there's something really important that you just said that maybe we could touch on. You talked about bringing a crew, someone to help if your bike breaks down. There was a spot in there where I think you had crashed and your pedal fell off and you were ready to give up. Like, you were ready to go home. It was raining. You wanted to go sleep in a nice warm bed. There was still like 137 miles left to go or something like that. Man, talk about adversity, and talk about how do you get through adversity? How do you challenge yourself and really let your mind do some magic in a sense and overcome things like that?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So in 2009, it was my second Ultraman race. After the first day, I was winning the race by 10 minutes. I had a 10-minute lead on the field. So I went into the day 2 171-mile bike race like in pole position, which is insane. I was 43 years old, this like corporate lawyer, I just couldn't even believe it was even happening at all. But about 30 miles into that day 2 ride, the wheel slipped out from underneath me on wet pavement, and I went down really hard. I landed on my left knee and my left shoulder, took all the skin off my left shoulder and banged my knee pretty good and broke my pedal. And it was on a section of the road where the one section of the road, like this 10-mile stretch where the crew cars can't follow you. So I had to literally pedal my bike on one leg for about a mile to link back up with my crew. And there was another crew there who was supporting a different athlete who saw my bike and asked me, I thought my race was over. I was done. Like, I'm not going to ride 150 miles on one leg. And he had a brand new pedal, the exact make and model that I needed to fit my cleat, the odds of which are like ridiculous. And at that point, after that 1 mile, one leg bike pedal, I had already talked myself out of completing the race, and just started thinking about how nice it would be to bow out of this painful experience and go to the beach. But he, fixed my bike and handed it to me and said, you've come too far. You got to get back on your bike and finish this thing. And which I did, which was the most painful, 7 hours on a bicycle I've ever had, blood dripping down my shoulder and my swollen knee the whole time. And certainly, I was no longer in the lead. I lost 30, 35 minutes fixing my stuff and all of that. So the idea of winning the race or being on the podium was out the window. But the thing is, I didn't get into this kind of racing to win races or even see how fast I could go. It was really about this internal search. So I was kind of having an existential crisis about my professional life, and I was at a crossroads. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to get more deeply acquainted with myself and my capabilities, and Ultraman seemed like, quite an amazing way to do that. And that was my attitude going into it. And that's exactly what I got out of it, because, as an athlete, if everything goes your way, if you have the perfect game or, you golf a perfect game, whatever, if everything goes perfectly well, you don't really learn that much. I mean, it's great for the ego, but
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
exactly an expansive experience. And it's only when things don't go your way and you're forced to make decisions under duress, extreme pressure, that you really learn who you are, what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And that reveals character, And so to me, that occurrence made it the perfect race for me, because that's really what I wanted to get out of it. And that's exactly what it delivered to me. So,
Sure.
I think it's it couldn't have gone better than it did.
It is, man. It's a great story. And I mean, if we kind of tone that down and apply it just to regular life situations that, you and I, that other fathers, other mothers, other people in general out there that we struggle with on the daily, especially those of us who are in recovery. What's your take on giving that up to a higher power? How do you approach that in your recovery?
I mean, it's not even a daily thing. It's an hourly thing. I'm
awesome.
Constantly taking my power back. My default setting is self-will run riot for sure.
Yeah.
And I have to do a tremendous amount of work to be in that place of faith, of surrender, of letting go. It's all a spiritual journey for me. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. I truly believe that. And so for me, it's always about, laying it down at the feet of the higher power and releasing, my agenda and being in acceptance of what is. Suffering is a result of your resistance to what is. And the more I can be in acceptance of that, through, faith and service and everything that we do in the rooms to get sober and stay sober, my life is better.
Sure. There was one quote I pulled from the book that it just popped out as soon as I heard it, and I think there was a little bit of sarcasm in it when you had said it, but it was that balance is for ordinary people, and I just kind of wanted to get into that a little bit. This pedal to the metal attitude that many of us alcoholics and addicts struggle with. How do you find balance, man?
That's another great question. I've been thinking a lot about balance over the last year. And, our culture is very intent upon this idea that, we should all live a balanced life. We should eat a balanced diet. Everything should be in balance in your life. And of course, nobody's life is in perfect balance. There's always something out of whack. And, if you're an alcoholic, there's probably more things out of whack than there is with the average person. And I'm just somebody by my very nature who's prone to extremes, whether it's drinking or training or work or whatever it is. Like, I'm an all-in kind of guy. And for a long time, I thought I gotta get in balance. Like, I can't be this way anymore. I have to be balanced. And I struggle with balance. And I've kind of come into, we were talking about acceptance earlier, and I kind of come into a place of accepting that this is the way that I am. And I have kind of an iconoclastic opinion about balance. Like, I think balance is overrated. I think on a daily basis, my life is very out of balance. Like, I get really focused on one thing. Like, today I'm editing a video. I've been doing it all day. Like, it's ridiculous. I shouldn't be doing it, but I'm just obsessed.
Yes, I totally get you.
And normally it'd be like, that's not balanced. You shouldn't do that. But I love it. And I have an audience that's interested in what I'm doing, and I'm passionate about that. And so I think it's okay to be out of balance in the micro, as long as your life is in balance in the macro. So if you telescope out from my life and look at it over the course of 6 months or a year, everything is in balance. I just vacillate between various extremes. I have certain rules. Sure. I don't drink or use, things like that. And, if I'm training too much and I'm not with my kids, that's an unacceptable out of balance scenario. So, I do maintain balance in the important things in my life, but I also think it's okay to allow yourself to, get a little bit more extreme maybe than, what normal society would tell you is okay about something that's important to you. And I think that if you look at the great feats of man, whether it's, Thomas Edison or you name it, anything that's been achieved is because that person allowed himself to be out of balance in pursuit of a higher calling. And so there's something laudable about it as well. So I'm not keen on people saying that you have to be in balance all the time.
You just made my day, bro. Like, seriously, because man, I struggle with that too. And, and like you said, in general society, it is this thing that's like, okay, you need to be in balance. And I totally get what you're saying. Like if it's something with my kids or with my wife or with something like that, and I'm out of balance, okay, that's one thing. But if it's something I'm passionate about, and like you said, I'm pursuing, and there's a greater calling for it, then man, get after it. And, it's really, really good to hear you say that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to kind of transition here into relationships a little bit, and there was something that I really liked hearing you talk about, and it was between you and your wife, and it was, excuse me, it was the fact that, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this. When you're walking up the stairs, you had the moment where you realized, like, dude, what am I doing to myself? I'm unhealthy. Like, I feel like shit. Like, what's going on? You had said too that your wife never pushed you. Your wife was very holistic, a vegetarian, very spiritual. You were kind of on the other end of that at the time, and she didn't push you into that. She let you find it yourself. And the reason I bring this up is because I think as men, and I know for me personally, I'm talking about me and my wife, I try to fix her all the time. I always want to fix, and it sometimes she just wants me to listen and just sit back and not try to fix, just listen and be there for her. I thought that was really cool from your wife's perspective, how she allowed you to kind of do that, and you ended up just crushing it after that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. That's a very astute observation, and it's very true. I think there was a period of time where, my wife would try to nudge me. She'd leave books on my night table, or why don't you eat this? Because she could see that I was suffering. I was just lethargic and overweight and unhappy, and she could kind of see how that could change if I would just take her hand. But the more she kind of nudged, and she's not a pushy, controlling person at all.
Yeah.
But the more she kind of, suggested, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? Like, the more I resisted. You know what that's like, right? Like, you don't want to be told what to do. Mm-hmm. And she really got to this place where, she calls it divine love. Like the sun shines its light, on everything without discriminating. You don't have to be a good person to have the sun shine on you. Yeah. And love works the same way. It's like, if you love somebody, love them as they are. And she came to this place where she was like, I love this guy. I want to be married to him, and I'm just going to accept him exactly as he is. And she didn't do it in a lip service kind of way. Like, she really got to an honest place where she really embodied that. And I think when that occurred, which was shortly before this staircase episode, where I got my chain yanked, with this health scare, I could feel it. Suddenly she was no longer, there, like, kind of nudging me, and suddenly that flips the mirror, and you look at yourself and you realize, like, oh, you're responsible for your own life and your own decisions. Like, who wants to do that, right? But, like, it made me think, like, oh, I have to be accountable to myself on this, not for somebody else, but for myself. And so I was kind of primed, to begin that process when I had this health scare that really catalyzed, everything that followed.
Sure. Let's talk about food, man. I love cheese too. Dude, I'm a sucker for cheese. Cheese pizza, the dairy products. You talked about that. You'd mentioned before you're vegan, you're a vegan advocate. Man, what are some tips, some little things that you do to make healthy food choices with a busy lifestyle, with kids, with work? I mean, trying to juggle different projects. I know it's probably a bit different for you, maybe because you have been on a solid plan for so long, but any advice on that tip?
Yeah, sure. I mean, now it's like second nature to me. I don't really think about it that much, just like you're probably not thinking about drinking today.
Yeah.
But I take a very recovery kind of based approach to it. The tools that I learned in recovery are highly applicable to my lifestyle, in particular my diet. And, when I had this health scare and realized I needed to make some changes, it was a 6-month period of transitioning before I fully adopted a plant-based diet. But, along the way I shed meat, and that actually wasn't that hard. Like, I didn't crave it that much. I realized, like, I'd been eating it most of my life without really thinking about whether I even liked it all that much. I mean, I like a cheeseburger, but like chicken and fish, I could care less about. But dairy was tough. Dairy was really hard. I craved dairy like crazy, and it's in everything. And when I finally, kicked the bucket on dairy, it was like being in rehab. Like I went through withdrawals, man.
Yeah.
It was tough. But about 7 to 10 days, after kicking dairy and being off meat, I really felt tremendously better. Like it was very noticeable. And then, it became a process of trying to find tools to maintain it. And I relied on the principles of recovery. Like, in recovery, you don't drink or use no matter what, right? You don't drink alcohol, you don't do drugs. Well, I don't eat meat and I don't eat dairy no matter what. And that removes all the decision fatigue out of it. It's just, that's my rule. And I keep it really simple. And so, within that, there's many strategies that I employ. I mean, I think, you have to make the healthy choice the convenient choice. That's the biggest rule. So you have to surround yourself with healthy options all the time so that your car doesn't, automatically pull into the drive-through without you being consciously aware of what you're doing because you're starving and there's nothing else around that, can satisfy you. So I try to always, at home we have tons of healthy food. I keep healthy food in my car, lots of fruit and nuts and dates and things like that. And I just, give it a little bit of a forethought. But, just like recovery, once you put some time and some distance between these foods that you crave, that craving loses its edge and loses its power. And so now, it just doesn't really, every once in a while I'll smell something that sounds appealing, but it's not that obsession, and I realized through this process how much I was addicted to food, perhaps, food even being, my number one drug of choice beyond drugs and alcohol, and how much I had medicated my emotions through my eating habits. And that's been a whole journey in and of itself.
Well, I think that's hard too with that, like we were saying, that pedal to the metal attitude kind of, it's either all or none. So I like the approach of approaching it from a recovery aspect. I'm not going to do it, period, because there's really no middle ground. I know, at least for me, that the middle ground stuff, man, it's a struggle.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Whether it's editing a video or a podcast or doing a project or eating or alcohol, there's really, really tough.
Yeah, I don't understand these diets where they give you a cheat day. Like if I had a cheat day, I'd spend 6 days thinking about the cheat day, and then suddenly I'd give myself 2 cheat days, and it would just devolve from there. It's like saying you can get drunk once a week. I mean, it just doesn't work.
It doesn't. It doesn't work. Nope, it doesn't work. Man, yeah, that's good stuff. I got one more question for you, Rich, and then we're going to get into the heart and hustle round, all right?
All right.
Real simple here. What advice would you give the newcomer who wants to get or stay sober?
The best advice I can give is to ask for help. No alcoholic likes to ask for help. I didn't want to ask for help. I wanted to solve the problem by myself. And when I was in that mindset, I just got sicker and sicker and worse and worse. You got to raise your hand. You got to open up. You got to find somebody that you trust, that you can talk to, and share your demons with that person. That is the absolute key. I think beyond that, the number one key in getting and staying sober is willingness, but you can't grant somebody willingness. Willingness is internally driven. So I hope anybody out there who's listening, who's suffering, is willing to do what's required to get sober. But beyond that, the first step, I think, is asking for help. At least have the willingness to ask for help.
Yeah, great advice. All right, Rich, we're going to jump into the heart and hustle round. You're going to put your heart into each answer, but hustle through it in 30 seconds or less. You ready?
Go for it.
All right, here we go. Number 1, where's the weirdest place you've ever thrown up, and where's the weirdest place you've ever woken up?
The weirdest place I've ever thrown up. I know I have some great ones, and I can't think of it right now, but I think, I've thrown up everywhere. You know what I mean? Like I've thrown up on the front glass window of restaurants. I've thrown up, in my bed, of course. Where haven't I thrown up? I've thrown up absolutely everywhere.
How about in a pool?
The weirdest, I've thrown up in a pool a lot. I've thrown up in a pool sober, just working out. Throwing up. I don't miss that. No. Weirdest place you've ever woken up. I've woken up in strangers' apartments. One time, it was a weekday. I was working at a corporate law firm. I woke up hungover, had a vodka tonic in the shower in the morning, and before I knew it, I was like at the airport flying to Vegas. Like on a weekday, I just called in sick, and then I just blacked out, and I woke up in a hotel room in Vegas, and I'd lost my wallet. I don't know what happened to my wallet with half my clothes. Like, I don't know what happened to me. I still don't remember how exactly I got home. But yeah, it's pretty, it's unspeakable demoralization.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's, like many of us, we have many stories like that. So the sobriety, man, God, it feels good. Number 2, what is the best thing about being sober?
The best thing about being sober is I get to live my life, my life just doesn't bear any resemblance to what it was like when I was drinking at all. And I'm so happy, and my life is so big and full, and I have so many amazing opportunities, and I get to wake up every day and do what I love doing, and I get to help people, and it's just so incredibly gratifying and beyond anything I could have ever imagined for myself. Because if you had told me, when I went to rehab that I was going to be doing what I'm doing today, not only would I have told you that's ridiculous and impossible, it wasn't even what I'm doing now, wasn't even anything that interested me back then. Wow. So I think, the best thing about being sober is that you get to hit reset on your life. You get to reboot your operating system, and you're surrounded by people that want nothing but good things for you, who will support you in, basically, recreating your life and living your dreams. And where else can you get that for free? It's incredible. So sobriety is, there's nothing not great about being sober, but, I can't say enough about how much sobriety has changed my life. I mean, I would be dead. I wouldn't be here at all. So I'm in overtime on everything.
Sure, man. Sure. Super inspiring. Number 3, what is one thing you know now you wish you would have known at the beginning of your sobriety?
The thing that I understand now fundamentally is what it feels like to live in faith. And by that, I don't mean, any kind of religious dogma. I mean what it means to tap into yourself, to reconnect with your heart and take action upon that when you don't know where it's going to lead, and trust that the universe will show up and provide for you if your intentions are pure and, your heart and your mind and your body and your spirit are all in alignment. And, that's something that I wouldn't have believed. It's like this weird, bizarre universal law that exists. But that premise, that precept has proven true in my life a million times over, and I've seen it happen in so many other people's lives in sobriety. And, it was a very difficult road of getting to a place of trusting that. There was a lot of what's going to happen if I quit my job, or what's going to, all those sorts of things that just gripped me in this prison of fear. The other biggest thing is that fear is not real. I was living my life based on fear for, the vast majority of, my adult life. And sobriety has been about unpacking that and understanding that fear is just an emotion. And sobriety has given me the tools to combat that fear and take action in the face of it. And that has transformed my life tremendously.
Number 4, how do you stay sober?
I'm very active in a 12-step program. I have a sponsor. I've got sponsees. I work the steps. I have a home group meeting that I go to. I stay in contact with my sober buddies. I'm of service, both in the rooms and outside of the rooms. And all of that is absolutely instrumental and critical, to my sobriety. And there's a lot of people that say to me, "Oh, it's been a long time. Like, you still go to AA?" It's like, of course I do. That's my number one priority. And unless it remains my number one priority, I won't be sober for very long.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. All right, Rich, where can listeners find more information about you, and where can they pick up a copy of Finding Ultra?
Yeah, sure. So my website is richroll.com, RICHROLL.com. That's where I have all my stuff. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at richroll. On Snapchat, it's I am richroll. You can find my videos on YouTube. Just type in my name. So I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. And as far as the books, Finding Ultra and Plant Power Way, you can get them on Amazon or any Barnes & Noble, any place that you buy books should be available.
Rich, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Shane. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show with Rich. go to thatsoberguy.com and join the Sober Guy community. There's some great resources on there, and there's some great ways to help keep you connected in your recovery. Peace, love, respect. Keep your blood clean.